Welcome to Sincast, presented by Cinemasins.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Sincast. This is Chris Atkinson from Cinemasins, joined as always by the voice of Cinemasins, Jeremy Scott.
Hi there.
And music video sins writer, Barrett Scher.
Hello.
And Jeremy, do you have something to rant about?
I'm as mad as hell. You're out of order.
You've never seen me very upset.
Yeah, we got to talk about this OJ show.
Yeah.
Because I think we're all watching it, and I had this interesting conversation with my friend Aaron, who reviews movies and has usually had the same taste as me, and he was like, it's great. And I was like, oh, wait, no, I'm watching it, but it's terrible. Like, it's very compelling. And it's very watchable in a soapish kind of way, but this thing is a cartoon. And I've seen a couple people on Twitter that are like, "This show is so good," and I'm like, just because you keep watching it does not mean it's good. Am I off base here?
No, not at all. I will say that this show, as cartoony as it is, and it is Ryan Murphy. This is the guy who gave us Nip Tuck and Glee and all that.
Right.
It is very cartoony, and it is horribly bad in many respects. But there's so many like little good things, good nuggets in it. Courtney B Vance is obviously like an over the top Johnny Cochran, but man, is he good at it! I love Courtney B Vance on this show, and I'm glad he's finally got something that has got his name sort of spread around, because he's been a great actor for a really long time. But yeah, like especially for me, the Kardashian stuff where he just can't resist pushing that Kardashian button.
Right.
Anytime Robert Kardashian shows up on screen, they have to show, well, what is Kim thinking about this?
That freaking brunch where he gets recognized and then lectures his daughters about family over fame. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, if you'd have made this movie before the Kardashians got famous, this would not be in here. You're just trying to, I don't know what you're trying to do, but it pulls me out. And I think the guy played in Darden is doing really good. I really like him.
He is. He's great.
He's the least cartoony performance caricature. I think the girl playing Marcia Clark is doing a good job.
Yeah, Sarah
but
Paulson.
They're giving her a lot of that Kardashian brunch type stuff that's a little over the top kind of for me. And then Travolta's literally letting his makeup job do the acting.
Yeah, I know. Like I feel like they've drawn, like they've made up the furrow on his brow. Like he doesn't have to make that expression. It's already
exactly.
I feel like he's auditioning for the next Nixon role.
You know what? No doubt. Oh my God.
And then we got to talk about Cuba Gooding, who they just decided not to put any makeup on at all to make him look like OJ.
Yeah.
And every time he's on screen, I want to flip the channel, and I like the guy.
Well, basically, it's like he's got that same like dead expression of like weariness on his face or whatever the entire time. Like just look under your eyelids a little bit, and then that's OJ, and you just go along with it.
Nailed it.
Yeah, and he doesn't. It's funny also about this show is that he's incidental to the story. Basically, he barely even shows up except in that first couple of episodes where it's the Bronco chase and all that.
Right. But
I like emo David Schwimmer. That's my favorite part of the whole thing. I sent you guys an email last night, a supercut of all the times that he says juice.
Oh yeah.
And as I was watching it again, by the way, they undersold how many times he says juice, because he says juice more times than is in that supercut.
Oh, that's insane.
I believe it.
And it's funny too, you bring up the juice supercut and all that other type of stuff. That's another thing that comes back to the Kardashians is is the scene where OJ jumps out of the window and everything, and Robert Kardashian's like, oh, no, he's about to shoot himself, and Robert Kardashian's like no, not in my Kimmy's bedroom, not in there, blah blah blah, and it's like, oh my God, man, can you just not just once, and they just can't help themselves. It has in the past couple of episodes sort of gotten away a little bit from all that, but oh my God, yeah, that show is insanely watchable. It's like Jerry Springer with a whole bunch of, like used to be top actors or whatever.
Yeah, like I was talking with Reverend Jiggles on Twitter, and he was like, "This show's so great." I was like, "Is it really though?" Like this scene that's on right now, it was like OJ screaming at somebody in the jail. I was like, "This is not good," and he's like, "Okay, I'll give you that." I was like, the more you start to look at it, you're watching because you're caught up in it, but I don't know that equates to quality. It's a very unique show in that regard because it isn't as bad as, Jerry Springer. I love that analogy, by the way, but when we're not talking about a show that's that bad. As you said, there's good nuggets here and there, compelling moments, but it's unique in that it's really watchable, but not all that good.
Yeah. And it's weird. I mean, that is a weird thing. I mean, it's just, I'm going to watch every episode of this. And it was kind of like that back then, though, when the actual stuff was going on.
I was going to bring that up. Like, how much of that is almost a weird, morbid nostalgia for the way it was when it was happening?
Yeah, it's because I think that's where we first started really opening up to just anything goes on television and everything. Everything that is weird about that show was everything that was weird about living back then during that whole thing. I mean, they've fudged something, but
you go back and relive some of that stuff, and you're like, oh, that shit's made up. And you're like, oh, yeah, that woman actually did write a book about giving California blowjobs or Brentwood
Brentwood hellos or whatever it is, or Brentwood welcomes or whatever.
That grocery cashier really did make like a inappropriate joke when Marsha Clark was checking out like that. I saw an article that fact checked that, and that was real.
I about died when I heard that. I was just like, really? Are you serious? And yeah, but they do other things where, like, Marsha Clark's second in command or whatever that has the heart attack in the middle of the courtroom or whatever. They fudged that a little bit. Because the guy had heart trouble, and he was actually in court all day, and then later on they kicked him off. But it wasn't because he fell in the middle of the courtroom and all that. But yeah, it's an interesting show, and you're right, it's horrible, but I'm going to watch every bit of it.
Me too. I just wanted to get that off my chest.
Another thing is this episode will come probably a week after Allegiant is made. It's probably going to make all the money it's going to make after Batman and Superman comes out next week. But Allegiant, I think it made, I'm looking at it here, like it made around $12 million yesterday. It's probably going to make like 40 or 50 or so over the weekend, which is and not much compared to, like, Hunger Games and stuff like that. But this is another one of these part 1, part 2 movies. Mm-hmm. But they've done something different with this one, where they're calling this one Allegiant, and they're going to call the next one Ascendant. Mm. And basically so that people, when they go and watch this, they don't think it's just part 1 syndrome or whatever like that. But it's this. I mean, if this succeeds, is that what we're going to see? Are we going to see are we going to see the Avengers, what is that one?
Infinity War.
We're going to see Infinity Wars turn into something different. Maybe not, since it's got such a well-known name or whatever. But are we going to start seeing that with movies now, where they call part 1 something else, and so that they can make it seem like 2 different movies?
Yeah, of course we are, because people are stupid, and a lot of them won't realize it. A lot of people who are fans of the first 2 Divergent Insurgent movies, like, didn't read the books. A lot of them did, for sure, but many of them won't even know that what's going on. And Hollywood's going to catch on to that. Mockingjay, if it were coming out this year or next year, would be Mockingjay and, I don't know, Mocking something else. It would have 2 different titles. You're right. The part 1, part 2 thing is going to go away.
Yeah, I think they've just gotten to the point where they realize people have wised up to this, even though they really wised up to it, I think, as far back as Kill Bill when it started doing it. But but they're doing this now, and I don't like it just because it's dressing up the same problem, where you have a movie that does not stand alone. It has to have the parts around it. I mean, it doesn't hurt on everything, on every series. Like I like the Two Towers a lot, and even though a lot of people say, well, Two Towers isn't anything without the first and third movie, but
it's
I like
my
Two
favorite
Towers.
one to watch.
Oh, yeah, it's my favorite one too. But I don't like this purposeful let's drag it out type of thing.
Well, and you know what? That's what The Hobbit did. The Hobbit split it into 3 parts, but called it all different things.
Yeah,
and they were all terrible, and I hate them.
That's true. And that just goes to show you how quickly I forgot them. That I thought that Allegiant and Ascendant was the first one doing it. But we're going to see movies that end, that are sprawling and then end abruptly and have no point except other than to make the next movie happen.
And I could rant about that too, because I think it's popular to bash on all these young adult fiction turned into movie series based on their post-apocalypticness. And granted, a lot of them are post-apocalyptic, but the one that the fact that I have trouble with Hunger Games even, and Maze Runner for sure, and Divergent, Insurgent, is it's like exactly what you just said. It's 2 hours of something, and then at the end, that was all a lie. Now here's the truth. And then the whole series just keeps doing that. And I'm like, why would I get invested in any of this? It's all bogus.
It sort of I don't know if you ever saw that South Park episode where their Okama Game Sphere gets stolen.
No.
And so they go and there's this big, huge reveal at the end between the government and like whoever this alien force is behind or whatever. It turns into this huge thing. And every time the kids think they're about to get their game system back, they have some more reveal that they want to get. But did you know that we were actually this? And blah blah blah. And so many times they'll say, do you want to hear the rest of the story? And they're like, no, not really. We just want to play our comic games. And like they're sitting there playing the game while like all this stuff goes on in the background. Like there's just like millions of reveals happening in the background and everything. And it's kind of like that. It's kind of like these movies are doing now, where it's like, did you know that this isn't actually the thing that you're seeing, but it's this. So our topic today came via a question. Actually, we just decided to make a whole topic out of it.
Of course, you are a character. Doesn't mean that you have character.
We'll get there, Pop. We'll get there.
This guy's name is David.
Yes,
David. Yeah. So this guy David sent us what is our favorite character development. And I think I'll just start this off. I think this is the easiest one to talk about is Pacino and The Godfather. Yeah. Michael Corleone is a character who has been, he's supposed to be the legit son in the Corleone family. Everybody else is in the business. He's gone off to war and all this other type of stuff. So he's a hero, war hero. And so he comes back, and the first layer of it that you get from him, and this is what I love about this movie, is that he tells the story of his father, giving the guy an offer he can't refuse or whatever, very calmly to his fiance Kay, and he's like my dad went in there and he threatened him or whatever, told him that he was gonna, I can't remember what the threat was. He told the guy he's gonna do such and that to him. And after that, the guy saw it,
or his brains will be on the contract.
Right, his brains will be on the contract. And he's like, "That's a true story," and he just says it really matter of fact to his fiance. He doesn't think that it's a big deal at all, and you can see the admiration in his face during that thing. And then it's sort of like as it goes along, he becomes he wants to be the guy that shoots the other mobster guy and the cop. He wants to be that guy, and he hasn't ever done that type of thing before. And after he does that, he sort of, they send him off to Sicily and all this other type of stuff to go into hiding and everything. And but by the end of it, he comes back, and he's become that person. He's become the person that his dad didn't want him to be, which is him. He didn't want him to become him. Yeah. And he has become that person. And of course the ending of it is great. He tells Kay right to his face, is like, I didn't kill his sister's husband or whatever. I didn't do that. And then at the end, they're like, they calling him Godfather as the door closes and everything. And she's like, oh, he kind of lied to me, didn't he?
That's not even going into Godfather 2 then.
Right.
Yeah. He is worlds different. There, you pick probably the shining example of a character arc that goes from one completely different location to another.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unrecognizable. And he plays it in his face and in his characterizations, and it's so different. It's unbelievable. I love that whole dramatic arc. It's my favorite.
Yeah, it's great. I think you're right. That's the perfect one to make the first one we talk about, because it's pretty perfect, and it's a huge arc. Not too many characters make the kind of change he did.
All right, we're done.
Goodbye, everybody. But no, I skipped over, quite a bit of it, because if you haven't seen The Godfather, you want to see all this type of stuff for yourself. But that character transformation is amazing. And so that just leads us into this topic. And Barrett, do you have any?
Yeah, I am actually going to stay with Pacino.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So my first inclination when I hear this topic is I actually thought about people that have kind of an unraveling from the beginning to the end. And a few things popped into my head, but the first thing that popped in my head was Scarface and Pacino's performance in that. And what struck me about this movie is that he is so fucking unlikable.
Right? Yeah.
Terrible character. There's no reason that we should like him. He's bad to his family. He's horrible with women. He's a stone cold killer. He actually gets off on it. He's greedy. Like, he's a terrible fucking person. but you're rooting for him this entire time for whatever reason. And he goes from just this power hungry street level guy to just making moves that in a vacuum make no sense. But for whatever reason, they work out for him until he gets to this absolutely obtuse, ridiculous situation to end it. And it's fun to watch, obviously, but it's amazing that people root so much. I didn't even mention the incest, by the way. But, people love this guy and they love this character, but it's so much fun to see him unravel and come part of the scenes.
Yeah, he's great in that. I've only seen it once, so I can't really speak too intelligently on it, but I remember feeling that way, that it was kind of a descent into madness almost.
Yeah, and it just goes and proves that theory that if you have the camera following somebody around and they're the main character, then you root for them no matter how bad whatever bad stuff that they do. A lot of times what I love doing when we're doing these Sims videos is like, they show a good character and he does all this bad stuff. And I was like, if you turned this around where he's like a secondary character that's ancillary to the main character, we would hate that guy. He'd be the antagonist of the movie. And so it's the same thing with Scarface. And it is kind of funny though, even though that, he is the protagonist, you're like, yeah, I hope he gets what he deserves by the end of it. Everything.
Well, and if we're going to talk about this topic, I all of mine on my list are movies, but I think we should at least give honorable mention to Breaking Bad, at least from series beginning to end, in terms of a really great, wildly huge character arc, and it's all earned in my opinion.
I wrote down in my notes cheating Bryan Cranston in Breaking Bad.
Okay, good. I just feel like if we didn't mention it, somebody's going to jump on us and like, no, Breaking Bad. And I'm like, well, we were focused on movies.
Yeah, because the show itself is the character arc. Right. I love. I mean, we can talk about Bryan. Go ahead, talk about Bryan Cranston Breaking Bad, because even though this is movies and everything like that, I think most people who love movies would love Breaking Bad too.
Okay. Well, this is one of those shows that gripped me from episode one. The premiere is great, but if you look at who Walter is there, he's meek, he's nervous, he's a good person. He only decides to cook meth so he can pay for his cancer treatment, and because he knows how to. There's really very little evil there at all. And then there are these moments all along the way through all the seasons where he just takes these little steps towards confidence, like when he blows up that chemical in Tuco's office or whatever, and then when he's in the parking lot shooing away the other guys buying drug supplies, all the way up to Say My Name in the desert, where he basically doesn't care. He is the man and he knows it and he's going to prove it. And it's such a fantastic performance that to be able to play the subtle changes all along the way. It's just super impressive. He's such a great actor.
I also love how one of the big things of the show is how he started a company with his friends and got, he left before it became super rich.
Right.
And one of the things that I enjoy about that show is how much that sort of drives him. It's part of it that drives him to do well in this meth business. So he wanted to carve something out for himself. And once he does that, and he's complete. I mean, there's a point where they show all the money he's been making or whatever. It's like in a pile. And it's like, you could stop right now easily and have enough for your family and everything. But he's like, nope, gonna keep on going. The meth keeps on running.
Yep.
It's interesting that you say that. Actually, the way I see it, he's motivated by science, like being around scientists. Like, they just want to get shit right. And every time you can see this little spark in his eye, every time that like he perfects a formula or something like that, like he's like, oh, that's awesome, and he really like gets re-excited about it. And then it becomes more like autocratic that he has to get this right. And that kind of spreads into the rest of the business and how he interacts with all
I
the
love that
and everything.
Classroom lecture in one of the early seasons where he's talking about carbon and just you can see the passion. And he's a really good teacher. And even as he's mean to Jesse all along the way, he's still a really good teacher in some of their interactions. But, he's such a good person there in the beginning. And for all the reasons that make sense, he makes all these terrible decisions.
What is it? He's like, the chemistry is the science of transformation, which they showed ad nauseum during the finale season or whatever. Like, they're like, wow, look how far this guy's come.
Yeah, but even that lecture devolves into the guy who got screwed on a patent and GM or somebody made a bunch of money, and there's that bitterness there of that company that he was almost part of that even creeps into his teaching when he's still a good guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. I also wrote down Matthew Broderick's character in Election.
Good call.
Election is a movie that I feel like gets, it's another one that I could put in that not really talked about much for whatever reason. I mean, maybe it's gotten a cult following. I actually saw today, there's a show on True TV that they're talking about these movies, and one was Airplane, and the next one that came on was Election. So I was like, well, maybe it does have some sort of a cult following. It didn't do anything at the box office. And I don't hear people today really quoting it or anything. It's one of the most quotable movies.
It is.
Matthew Broderick in this is, you talk about a character arc, and so many things happen. I can't really get into all the things that change his character, but he's an idealist, and he's a good person, and somebody, Tracy Flick, Reese Witherspoon, sort of teeters him on the edge where he's like, I need to stop this. I need to put an end to this somehow. And so he does everything he can that's legal to try to do that. He gets the class, the most popular kid in the class to run against her in the school election. He does all these different things to try to derail her. And he's actually at the point where he's just going to he feels like he's going to have to give up and say, all right, well, I tried and I succeeded. But then he goes to even further depths. That is, and it's right at the beginning too, where there's like that, where he's talking about the difference between ethics and morals and stuff like that. It comes and plays beautifully to his character by the end of the movie. I don't know it's one of the saddest things I've ever seen a character go through. There's so many little plot details. Election is filled with plot. It's amazing how much they pack into it. And all the little plot details lead up to his character making these bad decisions. And I just, if you've never seen Election, you have to see that movie.
He suffers so many embarrassments. I mean, he pays for everything he does, but it's such a fall from grace. That final scene showing where he is and what's going on with his life is just so pathetic.
Oh yeah, and he's got that shiny. He's like polishing up a turd there at the end. He's like, I've always wanted to live in New York, and it's like $1,100 for an apartment that's like the size of a closet and all sorts of stuff. And he's he's teaching at the Museum of Natural History and all that. And it's just like he's just a low version of his former self and everything. But he's making it work,
Yeah.
and oh my God. And his futile attempt to try to get back at her at the end too, because he sees her and she's getting into a limo with like a senator or whatever, and he throws a cup at him or whatever. One of the most priceless little expressions afterwards too, where the guy gets out, he's like, "Hey," and Broderick's like, I'm going to run this way.
That was a weird departure for him. I mean, after he did The Cable Guy, he did this, and this was like sandwiched in between like Godzilla and like Inspector Gadget and all that crazy shit. Right?
It came out after Godzilla. It was he had Cable Guy 96, Godzilla was 98. This was 99. I don't remember too much in between there, but Broderick was still sort of viable at the time. He was still kind of coasting on that Ferris Bueller's fame and everything.
He still is.
He kind of still is, but you don't see him as much anymore. I don't know. He might be more of a stage guy now, because his big hit after that was The Producers on Broadway.
Right.
Yeah. The movie itself didn't do anything, but
for
that was
reason.
Yeah, with good reason is right. But Broderick is so good in that, and I feel like probably when you've spent a long time doing a Godzilla movie, you're probably like, thank God this hit my lap.
Even if I have to wear a prosthetic bee sting on my eyeball,
I don't have to react to tennis balls in the air.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, guys, seriously, if you haven't seen Election, watch that movie. It is one of the funniest things you'll ever see. It's probably in my top 5 comedies.
Yeah, part of the movie's charm is how shockingly vulgar it is at times.
Oh my God. It's funny. I watched this movie with my brother and his wife, and I decided, I was like, I'm not going to warn them about this. And there's the first moment, this movie's a little bit filthier than normal. I was like, this scene's about to come up. Oh my God, this is going to hurt a little bit. And I don't think she ended up watching the rest of the movie. Anyway, Barrett, do you have another?
Yeah. Okay. So what I like, kind of the opposite of the devolution or like the unraveling, is when characters really have like this crazy drive in them. And one of the best movies that I've seen recently that characterized that was Whiplash.
Yeah.
And Miles Teller's character is this kid that applies to this very, very high level, top ranked music school in the jazz band led by this crazy autocrat played by J.K. Simmons. And this kid, I mean, just the hellish torture that he goes through, both, from Fletcher, the band leader, and then just kind of from himself.
Yeah.
Is really impressive to me. And even though it's, kind of against his whole family's wishes and everything, they're all successful people, except for, his dad's supportive and everything. But that, to me, is just a terrific performance, because when he comes out the other side and he's just doing this FU drum solo at the end, they hate each other so much by the time, Andrew and Fletcher, but they're just linked so much because what he's doing is so badass that they can't break that connection. It's an incredible last scene.
I actually feel you're totally right, by the way. This is a great arc. He's fantastic in this movie. This movie is amazing. Like, there's 2 or 3 moments in the climax where you're smacked with a huge bit of emotion. But I kind of felt like they came to like each other by the end of his solo. Like, there was maybe
in that 3 minutes or something like that, right?
It's like the teacher finally sees this immense talent that he never thought was actually there. And the kid finally sees what he can do that he never really believed in himself before. And I felt like they kind of bonded there in that moment to where I wouldn't be surprised in whatever future that movie has that they are, communicating or working together or something.
But it comes right on the heels of him just completely screwing him.
Oh,
right?
man, totally. That's why, everybody said, watch this movie. And it gets to that part where he screws him. And I'm like, this movie is going to depress the F out of me. And then the kid just turns it on its ear and you have like a whole second positive experience. God, I love that movie.
Well, let's face it. In the future of this movie that this movie has, that's one good moment that they have between each other, and then after that, they're screwing each other again. That's exactly what's happening after this movie is done. Whiplash is a good one, and his character, I feel like, has a sort of a two-path, arc or whatever. One, he could be great, and he could be a great drummer. He is a great drummer, and still have some part of his humanity left with him. And the other road is to follow down the J.K. Simmons route and say, I have to dedicate 24 hours of my life to this, and I can't have a girlfriend, and I can't have anything else because that's going to ruin me being transcendent. So he's deciding that his decision is between being great and transcendent. And it's I think that's an amazing thing, because very few people would choose to I'm already a great drummer. Who I don't need J.K. Simmons to tell me that I'm a great drummer.
Right.
But he realizes that, and there's that great line in there that he gives him, is like, there's nothing better, there's no worse words in the English language than good job. It's exactly what he takes to heart and everything. I really enjoy that his decision is not between, he's not going to be a bad drummer if he decides not to go down this path.
Right.
He's just going to be a great one.
Yep.
And that's what I love about it. All right, Jeremy?
All right, I'm going to give you two at once here because I feel like I lost a chance with the whole Breaking Bad thing, even though I love that.
Go ahead, man.
But they're also, I wrote them together anyway because they're very similar arcs. And the first one I'll talk about is Leo in Blood Diamond. And if you've seen this movie, everything that happens to everybody in this movie is all because of Leo's selfishness. Everything. Everyone is where they are, and the things that happen to them because Leo wants that fucking diamond. And by the end of the film, when he realizes somebody has to die, and he spent all this time with these people, he sort of realizes, I think, that it's all his fault. And goes the complete selfless route. So he goes from selfishness to selflessness, lets the others go on ahead without him, and, basically stays behind for certain death. The movie itself is pretty heavy-handed with the Blood Diamond messaging, and I don't have a problem with that. But his character and the arc that he takes, I love watching that movie because he just goes from pure evil to pure good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is also that year he could have been nominated for The Departed as well, but they gave him the nomination for Blood Diamond instead. But yeah, he's really good, and I remember the trailer for it. I was just like, oh my god, this accent that he's putting on, I'm gonna hate. And then I watched the movie, and I was like, oh, I can kind of get along with this. This is like, pretty good.
Yeah, he sneaks it
Charlize Theron might have something negative to say about it, but I don't. It sounded pretty authentic to me. The other one that we can talk about them both is Clooney in Three Kings. Which is another one of those movies I don't ever hear anybody talk about anymore.
Another 1999.
Yeah, you should go watch if you haven't seen it. And it's basically Desert Storm set. The war is over, and these selfish soldiers find this map, and they decide to go looking for the gold. They steal the gold. In the process of everything that happens, by the end of the film, all Clooney cares about is helping these people. And in the beginning, all he cared about was getting that gold and protecting them. So he's basically a con man who's a badass Army Ranger. And it's a great film for a bunch of different reasons, but I love the redemptive arc for both Leo in Blood Diamond and Clooney in Three Kings to go from so selfish to so selfless and earn it along the way.
Yeah. Well, and you root for both of them, too.
Yeah.
And it's not like a Tony Montana you root for him because the camera's on him, because they're not necessarily the primary characters the entire time.
Right.
This Clooney is more so than Leo. But both of them, you can see the flicker of good in them as it comes across in their interactions with everybody. And I think it was earlier on with Clooney's character in Three Kings where he kind of showed shades of like, yeah, maybe I do care about this a little bit more than the gold bullion.
Three Kings is that movie is so good. That's a David O. Russell, early David O. Russell that before his renaissance, but it also started his reputation as the bad guy as a director, doesn't get along with his actors at all.
Didn't Clooney and he fight or something?
Clooney threatened to beat his ass because David O. Russell was like absolutely just he was just giving this one guy an undressing in front of everybody, just chewing him down. And Clooney was like, I'm not putting up with that and everything. And so there was like a near fist fight on the set or whatever. But, I love that scene, when Clooney is still really going after that gold bullion or whatever. He's like talking to those people to try to get him a car. And he's like getting everybody together. It's like, yeah, many nations together, coming for, and this is all really, he just wants to get rich and everything. And it's like, yeah, many nations, and everybody's getting along with it. Yeah, many nations. And then finally the guy was like, can I give car? Can I give you car? I love that scene. That movie's really good. I mean, 1999, what a year.
Yeah, it was a good year.
You know what? I'm going to go, I was trying to make this somewhat equitable. I don't know if it's to my detriment here, but I'm going to go on an actress this time. Emma Thompson in Sense and Sensibility. I talked a little bit about this movie when Alan Rickman died a month or so ago. But I believe this character is obviously the heart of the movie. And I feel so bad for her character the entire time because you're in this era of, it's in the title, Sense and Sensibility. She can't emote anything about what her true feelings are. She's in love with the Hugh Grant character and everything, but she can't say anything because he's betrothed to another, or she's not wealthy enough to marry into his family. And they're basically the whole time that she has to talk with him, she has to hold back those feelings and can't say a word about it because it's pointless. But I think where it pays off, and I also love that there's a scene in there where her sister, Kate Winslet, says like, you never express anything, whatever. And she's like,
believe me, Marianne, had I not been bound to silence, I could have produced proof enough of a broken heart, even for you. That type of thing. I love that scene where she says that, but especially at the end when she finds out that Hugh Grant is available and loves her and wants to marry her and everything, there's that break of just tension and relief, and she cries and laughs at the same time. At the very end of it, she's had to keep her emotions in this entire movie and finally gets a chance at the end. The movie isn't all about her and everything. The way I'm talking about it, it makes it sound like it's all about her, but the whole movie where she's just, she has to sit there and hold it in the entire time. Your heart breaks for her the entire time. Yeah. Because she can't say anything that's going to be, that's going to help and is useful. And she's tied to her station in life and everything.
I've only seen it twice. I saw it in the theater and then I watched it again with my family. And I loved it. It's been so long, that I just remember thinking all the performances were fantastic. And they are, as I remember, right? Alan Rickman.
Yeah, everybody is really good in it. This was sort of Kate Winslet sort of coming out too. I mean, They sort of knew, we already kind of knew about her from Heavenly Creatures and all that, but this was a big, I think she got nominated for an Oscar for this. Emma Thompson, I believe, won the Oscar for the adapted screenplay.
She wrote it?
Yeah, she wrote the adapted screenplay.
I knew she was smart, but I didn't know she wrote that movie.
Yeah, and so it obviously has a lot to do with Jane Austen's original material and everything, but she adapted it, and Ang Lee did a really good job.
Did Kenneth Branagh have anything to do with it?
No, he totally ghost wrote that shit. I mean, Come on.
I'm pretty sure by Sense and Sensibility, Kenneth Branagh was already with Helena Bonham Carter or something like that.
You're right. I think they were split up by then.
Yeah, so I think that was right around that year. It's funny, that was the exact year that Hugh Grant was caught with the hooker. That very year. It was 1995, and then you see him in this like period piece where he's prim and proper and all that, and it's like, oh, it kind of ruins the effect a little bit.
Yeah, we'll do one more round, I guess, and then move to questions.
Sure.
Yeah, you do one, and I'll do one, and then we'll do questions. Unless Chris has another one. All right.
This is something that we could come back to, too, because I think we
For sure.
go on all day about this. So my last one is, and it strikes me because he starts off one way and then he just cements himself in the way. And that's Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood.
Oh, yeah. Really good one there.
Because he starts, it's not, unlike what we're talking about here in like Michael Corleone and things like that. Like he starts at a place that's not too far away from where he ends up. But along the way, he just does whatever it takes to cement his status in this oil game and in the business game and everything, and ends up, being horribly tragic at the end. So he really, really just doubles down over and over and over on kind of his pathology, and just the way that it's played almost non-verbally. By Daniel Day-Lewis. It's just incredible. That's why, it was an open and shut case for the Oscar that year. I love that performance.
There Will Be Blood is probably one of my favorite movies of the last 10 years. It'd be in the top 5 for sure. Yeah. One thing that I read about this, and I didn't consider this before, but they were talking about his character, Daniel Plainview, is that an early scene in the beginning where he breaks his leg and he finds the gold or whatever, and then he drags himself out of that, that hole or whatever. And the next scene they show it, the guy, they're measuring the gold and they're trying to come up with a weight for it, a price for it and all that other type of stuff. You realize that he broke his leg and he had to drag himself all the way to town probably to get that gold weighted and priced, is a testament to his character and what his drive is throughout the whole thing.
I thought you were going to say that Daniel Day-Lewis was so method that he actually broke his own leg.
You know what? He probably did. Or at least he did something that made it where his leg wasn't useful or something like that. So
probably did.
It's the way he is.
I don't break character till the DVD commentary.
Yeah. But yeah, I love that too. That's another movie where little plot elements in the movie contribute to what decisions his character makes in it, and basically to his detriment. All the way through, as not as far as personally. He's rich by the end of it and living in a mansion, but to all of his personal relationships at the end, he has nobody at the end of the movie.
Well, I think we should definitely do this topic again because I still have too many I want to talk about. But I'm gonna,
same here.
I'm going to choose one final one, and we actually talked about this movie in a recent podcast for a different reason. But I'm going Antonio Banderas in The 13th Warrior.
Now that is off the wall.
Yeah,
I really like this movie. Nobody really knows about it. Maybe everybody saw it once and forgot about it. But he begins the movie as this poet from another country, dressed in all this formal royal garb. He's the furthest thing from a warrior possible. And through the trials and tribulations of this band of Nordic, whatever they are, Vikings, looking for this creature that turns out to be weird humans. I just ruined the movie. Anyway, by the end of the movie, when they're about to get attacked at the gate and they're all doing the oath, and he lifts his sword and he's standing right there in the front with all of them, and he couldn't even lift the sword in the beginning, and he's saying the oath with them, and he's fully one of them now. And it's just a fantastic arc because he just goes from almost a fop to like a badass. And I really like that movie. I realize it's not like super great, but anyway. I'm
trying to remember. I know I saw parts of this movie. It also came out in 1999.
Accidental theme.
Yeah, exactly. I saw parts of this movie at least, but I don't know if I had seen it, I would remember it today, but I don't remember it today if I did see it. But I do remember, because we talked about it before, that McTiernan did that same, language barrier thing with this one, where he zooms in on the mouth and then it comes back out and they're speaking English.
And the guy says, "How did you learn our language?" And Antonio Banderas says, "I listened."
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's another movie I'm going to have to revisit, because I didn't know that was still high on your list as something as a movie to watch.
I mean, I love it. I'm not. It's not a guilty pleasure. I think it's good, but it may just be a Jeremy thing where it just hit me the right way. Anyway, but you got one more?
Yeah, I have another one. Another movie that I don't think gets its due, although critics certainly love it and everything. But have you guys ever seen The Conversation?
Oh yeah, with Gene Hackman.
Yeah, Gene Hackman. Francis Ford Coppola did this movie the same year Godfather 2 came out. And I believe he got nominated. Both movies got nominated for Best Picture, and then I think he got nominated for Director for Godfather 2. But The Conversation is Gene Hackman at his very, very best.
Oh, okay.
He plays a character named Harry Call who does these. He bugs people. He, like, back in night was it sort of the Nixon Watergate scandal era or whatever. He's bugging people, like he finds a way to expertly put bugs on people and listen to them. And the conversation that is the title or whatever is of this couple walking around. I think it's San Francisco. I think it's it's Union Square, I think. And they're walking around and there's all these different sounds and everything that block what they're actually saying. And he's expert enough to take out a lot of that background noise and everything and to come up with a full conversation. But what his character is another obsessive, I guess. It's a guy who is more dedicated to his craft than he is dedicated to anything else outside of that. And if anybody does the same thing to him, he feels immediately violated and offended. And it's sort of what that movie's theme is about. It's like, should we be doing this? Should we be able to listen in on people's conversations like this, even if it is to maybe possibly to prevent a murder and everything? And the movie
I love those movies. They don't make them very often anymore.
No, they don't. And this one is, it's so good. It goes through this, whether we should do it or not. And even as he's finding out these things and you're like, oh, well, maybe he might be able to do this or whatever. The movie sort of flips it on him, and it sort of it does say, well, even if you think you don't know. This is where in a world where nothing is as it seems. This is basically what The Conversation is.
Well, can't you also look at The Conversation as, in a way, like a prequel to the character he plays in? Is it Enemy of the State?
Yeah, Enemy of the State, where he plays, I believe it's like Harry Saul or something like that. Yeah. It's like a rhyme. It's rhymes with call.
It's like a total homage to the character. I've seen The Conversation 3 times, 4 times maybe. I love it. It's great. It's super tense. And, I love that it's audio tense. Like, there are moments where you're listening to the audio and you really have to strain early on to try and hear what he might be trying to hear. And is that a great suggestion? Good call.
No pun intended. Harry Call. But yeah, guys, that's another movie, The Conversation. If you haven't seen that or heard of it or whatever, go and find it, because that's Gene Hackman at his very, very best. And it's Coppola at his best. And it's just, oh man, the movie's so good.
Prime Hackman is better than 99% of other people's primes.
No doubt for sure. All right, so we ready for some Q&A?
Question. I got something to say. I want the truth. I am listening.
Yeah, I've got a whole good list of questions here, and we're going to start with why what novel or novel series would you love to be seen made into a movie or franchise that has not yet been made into one? So basically, books, go.
Dark Tower, right?
And they just announced that.
I know, yeah. They've been announcing for the last, 10 years, right?
Yeah,
well, they cast it, though. They cast it this time, though.
Oh, man.
Idris Elba's going to be in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that made, if it's made right, of course. But that's so cinematic. That whole thing, especially the first book, The Gunslinger, is so cinematic that it just begs to be put on the screen. And it gets a little bit off the rails as it goes down to the 6th and 7th book.
I'm trying to remember. I know I've read the first 2 books of this. I don't think I've gotten past the second. But you're right. It's almost like King was writing sort of a movie treatment with this thing. What I really like about some of the intros to these books is that I think he finally did finish it, didn't he? It's like now it's like 8 or 9 books or something like that. But he said something like, I don't know where this is going. I have no idea where this is going. I'm just going to write whatever wherever it comes to. But yeah, good. That's a good one. It was actually the first thing that popped in my head too, even though I'd heard the announcement.
Well, I'm going to pick something that most people probably haven't even heard of, but it's maybe my favorite book.
The Ables?
No, it's called Peace Like a River. It's by a guy named Leif Enger.
I think you let me borrow this book. I think I've read this book.
You might have. It's it's set in the, early 1900s. It's about a family that goes off looking for their missing child. It would almost have to be an independent or art house film. There's not a ton of action, and it's going to basically be a drama. But the book is so beautifully written, and it's just some of the best prose ever. And I've read everything this guy's written. There's only 2-3 books. But at one point it was going to get made. They had it in development. Billy Bob Thornton was going to play the dad. And I got all excited. That was 8 years ago. And nothing's happened since. But it's one of my very favorite books. So I would probably choose that one first.
The one that I'm going to say has been attempted before. But it's also been done poorly. And, I think it's one of those that people are going to say, well, it's always going to be done poorly because it's this and that. But The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a good series. I mean, it starts to taper off a little bit as it gets past its 3rd book and everything. But if you could just do that a little bit, that 2005 movie that came out, oh man,
it wasn't as bad as people probably remember it as.
Yeah, but it just, there were so many things off about the humor in it. There was no timing.
Oh yeah,
no timing in it at all. And also it had been done better, really. Even though there's a BBC series that came out that was, it's just, it's absolute Doctor Who production value garbage. Which is gonna, I'm sure, ingratiate myself to Doctor Who fans, but yeah, there's that, and there's an audio book of it, and they get the timing down so well in those audio recordings and everything. Of course, I had that in my head while I was watching the movie, and listening to the narrator do his stuff and doing it quicker without any timing and everything. I was just like, oh, this is awful. And I think if you could get somebody that's well attuned to the comedy of the whole thing, they could get it. They could do one that's good. I mean, Jay Roach, he's a guy. I mean, he did Austin Powers and all that. It seemed like a perfectly good director to do that, but it just wasn't. For whatever reason, they couldn't get that right.
Your answer leads perfectly into the next question. So, because you sort of cheated in your answer, but the next question is, you guys have bemoaned the remaking of older movies, but are there any movies you'd actually like to see remade? So Hitchhiker's Guide would fit perfectly in there for you, I would assume, since I just listened to what you said.
Yeah.
So I'm cheating in my answer to this question. But I want to see more Matrix universe films, good ones. And I've said this before, I think. It's such a rich universe. I think you could go back and tell young Morpheus stories. I think you could tell stories of other ships and previous Neos or the ones. I think you could tell stories set in the future of what we've seen. And I just feel like it's a world that has potential. I don't want to see a remake. I don't want to see a reboot, but I would like to go back to that world.
No, that's a great answer, actually. It's so expansive, right? You could go into any sort of character's world and just play with that, whether it's within the Matrix or within the real world. Right?
How badass would it be if Netflix put Daredevil kind of production values and money behind a young Morpheus series?
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I mean, oh man.
I know that there's a few movies that I've watched where I like everything except this. And if they could just change this, it would be a great movie.
Yeah.
Or I don't like this, but I like the premise, and if it could be done better, so on and so forth.
I'll tell you what came to mind, actually, after I kind of processed the question. And this is probably another unpopular opinion, but I didn't like anything about Walk the Line. And I didn't think it was very true to Johnny Cash. I know it was the nice love story and everything with June and everything, but I think it could have been done so much better. I never bought Joaquin Phoenix as Johnny Cash. That's probably just me. I did buy Reese Witherspoon as June Carter Cash. She was fantastic, but like the whole narrative just didn't work for me. I think somebody could do the Johnny Cash story in a much different take and much better. Yeah, so there's my answer.
All right, should we move on to another question?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. See, I'm hitting you guys with another surprise. I do have an answer ready if you flail for a minute. But who's your favorite voice actor or vocal talent in terms of I suppose.
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
Go for it.
Alec Baldwin.
Good call.
Man has the most beautiful voice, whether it's on, he's got a podcast called Here's the Thing on the New York Public Radio. But he's the narrator in Royal Tenenbaums and I think a couple of other Wes Anderson films. But once he hit 50 or so, he just developed this voice that wasn't there in the Hunt for Red October days or the earlier Baldwin days. But now it's just absolutely glorious. I could listen to it all day long.
That's great. Good answer.
Mine would be H. John Benjamin.
Nice.
He's, I mean, he's on two different hit shows right now, Bob's Burgers and Archer. And he's always been a great, character voice actor guy, kind of along the lines of Patrick Warburton, who I'd probably put up there too.
That's a good one too.
But H. John Benjamin he's got that way about his voice that is instantly humorous and instantly engages you into whatever you're watching. And it's funny when you put his voice with Archer, it totally goes along with that. And he put his same voice with the guy in Bob's Burgers, it goes completely along with that. Yeah. And they're two completely different characters. And he's also funny as the can of whatever he is in Hot American Summer, and the Netflix series too, or whatever. Just him coming up is always welcome. It's welcome to me.
Okay, so I'm going to go with Alan Tudyk.
Okay,
nice.
Who I don't think a lot of people realize how much voice over animation work he's done. He was a voice in the Ice Age movies. Mm-hmm. He was a voice in Wreck-It Ralph, which is what I'll come back to and finish with. He's been a voice on Family Guy.
iRobot.
He was Robot Chicken voice. He's been a voice in Frozen. He was a voice in Big Hero 6. He was one of the voices in Adventure Time. He's one of the voices in, it just goes on and on and on. Rick and Morty. But in Wreck-It Ralph, where he plays King Candy, where he's doing a sort of homage to this old comedian whose name I forget, is where I think he just shows the most obscure range in what he can do, because I didn't even know that was him until I'd looked at the credits after I watched the movie.
And it's just a good mark of great mark of an actor is that he can just, you can do that without thinking of him or, what he, a lot of times when they put these, big names in a cartoon or whatever, you can't get them out of your head when they're doing it. And he can just do that seamlessly because he's a character actor and everything. So he's really good at it. I would also mention, even though guess technically it's not voice. I mean, it is, but Andy Serkis is another one that I would put on here.
Good call.
And he's another guy that, for various reasons has never been nominated for an Oscar and should have, just for the things that he's doing. But we haven't gotten to that point yet where people think that, when you do a digital manipulation of somebody's performance, is it a good performance or not? We're in that gray area with that. But Andy Serkis as Gollum Gollum is one of the first CGI characters that I completely buy, and it's because of him.
Well, even in King Kong, he's doing all the vocal grunting, like all of King Kong's noises are him.
Right. And a lot, that's what a lot of people don't understand, the sort of the serious work that goes into that. If we're going to give Leonardo DiCaprio an Oscar for, going through all sorts of hell and stuff like that, that's basically what we gave it to him for. We should give somebody like Andy Serkis some
Caesar
a nod for that. Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Good one. That should have been the first one. You smart good.
All right. Well, I think that does it for the Sincast this week. If you have any comments, questions, whatever, want to tell us what we're doing good, bad, or whatever, go to SoundCloud for that. We are also doing this podcast in 3 different rooms across the United States of America due to Zencastr. Barrett, you got any more to say about that?
Yeah, the folks at Zencastr can help you with all your podcast needs. We are not sponsored by them. We're not paid by them, but we just like them and we use them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're interested in using them for any sort of web conferencing, recording, or podcasts, go to zencastr.com. That's zencastr.com.
Yes, and that is, and it's absolutely hilarious that we are not sponsored by them, even though we just gave a sponsor basically related rant about them there. But that's absolutely true. Anyway, that is the Sincast for this week. Signing off with Chris, Jeremy, and Barrett. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit Cinemasins.com.
One guy says watching Jeremy use a fork is like watching someone pull off one of their fingernails slowly.
What?
And so I went back and watched it, and I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong. Like, when I'm holding something in place with the fork to slice it with the knife, maybe I'm holding the fork backwards. That's all I can come up with. But they make it sound like I'm a mongrel.
Hey, guys, I'm back. I just killed somebody.